everyone, welcome back to another tutorial. Today I am happy to be showing you how to make the Liberty Shoulder Bag by Needle and Anchor Supply Company. This is a really fun sew. It is great for a beginner, it is great for an expert bag maker. In the pattern, there are two different ways of doing it. I chose to do it with the diagonal slip pocket, and I have one on each side, or you could do it with just a regular slip pocket that's kind of uniform all the way across. I thought this was fun. I didn't see a lot of tutorials already done on this that had the diagonal slip pocket, so I thought for sure this is what I had to do. About this bag, let me show you some of the features of the bag. So you have two slip pockets, one on each side. It has a really unique strap here. I mean, the only thing holding that strap to the bag is actually this O-ring, and the O-ring is too big to get through this connector piece. So that's the way it is on both sides, which is awesome. It's got a double magnetic snap closure, a zipper pocket on one side, and two slip pockets on the other side. It's a diagonal slip pocket on the inside as well. I've sewed it into two because I like to have two in my bag. Materials I use. This lovely geometric shape is actually Chrissa's of Needle and Anchor, who designed this pattern. This is a fabric that she has designed herself, and you can buy it from Spoonflower. This one I got in the canvas linen. I will put a link to that below in the description. My vinyl is just black Daytona marine vinyl from Fabricland. My hardware is gunmetal hardware, all from Emma Line bags. Interfacing in this bag. I didn't use any medium woven interfacing because I am using canvas. So if you are going to be using a cotton lining or any kind of cotton fabric, you will want to back that with SF101, but because I used the canvas, I didn't back it with anything. It was thick enough. The interfacing main stabilizer in this is, I use Pellon Flex Foam, so you can also use Decovil Light. And in the bottom here, to make it a little stiffer, I used Decovil Heavy. I did not keep the foam out of my seam allowances, as I do have an industrial machine. So make sure if you are on a domestic machine that you use her pattern pieces, because it keeps the foam out of the seam allowances that way. I did not do that. I just cut them all the same because my machine can handle it. Anyways, this is a really fantastic sew. So I will leave a link down in the description to where you can get this pattern. It has been out for a while, as well as a link to where you can get some of this amazing print that Chrissa has designed. And yeah, how about we get to making this bag? I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you at the end.
All right, so you are going to need some medium-sized rivets, some number 5 zipper tape, 2 1.5-inch circle rings, 2 magnetic snaps, a number 5 zipper pull, I am going to add in 2 strap ends, two bottom pieces, so your exterior and your main, and plus your Decovil Heavy piece for the base. I have not lined any of my pieces with SF101 as I am using canvas. Your connector piece with the stabilizer piece of Decovil Heavy. Your 2 strap pieces, because they are double-sided straps, so I've got a piece of my canvas and a piece of my vinyl. My 2 main bottom pieces. My zipper pocket piece, my 2 top panels, my 2 lining pieces. My diagonal slip pocket. So you want to cut 3 sets of this mirrored to one another each set. So 2 for the exterior slip pockets and 1 for the interior slip pocket. 2 exterior gusset pieces and 2 lining gusset pieces. Your zipper overlay piece and your flex foam, and then your straps here. So what I'm going to do for the straps is I'm doing it slightly different than the pattern because I'm going to be putting on strap ends, so I'm going to leave my ends raw. So on the exterior piece, I have marked the center line and I'm using double-sided tape along that center line. And then I'm going to take each of the long edges and fold them into that center line. Now, if you don't want to use strap ends and you don't want to have a raw edge here, follow the pattern to figure out how to do that. Okay, so that is done. Now I'm going to take my cotton linen piece and I am going to actually use my iron to make a crease in half, fold it in half, and then I'm going to fold the long ends in like this and give that a good press. Okay, so now that is done. So to make our double-sided strap, what I'm going to do is on the wrong side of our vinyl piece, I'm going to take some more double-sided tape. You can definitely use clips for this if you want to, but I'm going to put the double-sided tape right down the middle of the wrong side of the vinyl part of the strap. And then I'm going to take the cotton piece and put it wrong sides together with that piece using the tape to hold it in place. Try to get it as even as you can. Then we're going to take this to the machine and do a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance down each side. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, because I have left the edges raw on my straps, I am going to go ahead and install these 1-inch strap ends onto the raw edges. Okay, so now let's work on our slip pockets. So you want to take the mirrored pieces for all 3, place them right sides together, and clip it along that top curved part. So we're going to do the same for all 3. So for 2 of them, we're going to do a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and for the third one, we are going to do a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. The 5/8 of an inch seam allowance one is going to be our lining panel pocket. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and chain stitch these with my machine. So the first two at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance and the last one at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so now that we have all 3 of those done, what we are going to do is take our pinking shears and trim down our seam allowances to 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, somewhere in there. If you don't have pinking shears, you could do little notches along this curve. So you will do that with all 3, and then what you're going to do is you are going to turn these pieces wrong sides together and give that seam a really good press. Do the same with all 3. Now we are going to top stitch along that curve on all 3 pieces. And I'm going to chain stitch these. This is just a way of saving thread because on my industrial machine I do not have a thread cutter. Okay, so now let's make the exterior main panel. So you're going to take your bottom panel and one of your top panels. We're going to put them wrong sides together, matching up that long edge. Now this could be fun. You could do these in 2 separate fabrics. We could have done the bottom panel in that canvas as well. As it's kind of the back of the pocket, I just chose to use my vinyl for both pieces. Okay, and we're going to go across here with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance on both pieces. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to push that seam down towards the bottom panel and then top stitch that seam in place right at that mark. So make sure that your seam is pointed downwards towards the bottom panel. As you can see, I have a freshly oiled machine, which is very important with industrial machines. Okay, so go ahead and do the exact same thing with the other piece. All right, now we are going to start prepping our lining pieces for our magnetic snaps. I apologize that my camera keeps going out of focus. I have a brand new iPhone and I am still learning to use it. I do think my video quality is amazing, but for some reason here it just keeps wanting to change its focus. So I went ahead and I marked my placement for my 2 magnetic snaps, which you just use the pattern piece for. I'm also going to go ahead and install my zipper pocket. I'm not going to do that on camera. I do have a class for that and I'll include that down in the description below. Okay, so now let's prep our connectors. I have fused on my piece of Decovil Heavy down the center line of our connector piece. I'm going to draw a center line here of 1 inch. And then I'm going to utilize my double-sided tape. Again, you can use clips here if you prefer. And we are going to fold those long edges into the center line, just like we did with the straps. And then we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to top stitch each of those long sides with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then again with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I accidentally did a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance instead of a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, which is fine. Just means our top stitching is closer together. Okay, so now you want to take this piece, you want to fold it in half and cut it in half. Now you're going to take your 2 gusset pieces, measure down 1¼ inches, and there we have that focusing problem again. Oh my. I'm going to mark a line at that 1¼ inch. I'm going to place my connector piece here like so on both pieces. And then we're going to take this to the machine and we are going to just baste these on following the line of the gusset pieces. Repeat with the other side. Okay, now we are going to trim up those connectors following the line of the gusset piece. Okay, so now we're going to take our gusset pieces, our bottom piece, which I have fused on the piece of Decovil Heavy centered, and our 2 main exterior pieces, and we are going to go ahead and back them with foam. So my foam I'm not keeping out of the seam allowances because my machine can handle it. If you're on a domestic, make sure you cut the foam pieces as per the pattern pieces, so they are outside of the seam allowances. You can also use Decovil Heavy in place of the foam here if you wanted to. I myself prefer the loftiness of the foam, but you can use any interfacing of your choice. On a domestic machine, you could also baste these on if you didn't want to cut it out of your seam allowances. And if you have a zigzag stitch, that compresses the foam nicely and makes it very manageable with the foam in the seam if you decide to do that. Okay, so I went ahead and I put on my nameplate. You put that on in between the layers of the front slip pocket. And what we're going to do is we are going to find the centers of all of our pieces. And I'm just going to put a small clip where my centers are, or a small snip on the top and the bottom. And you want to make sure that the smaller slip pocket is going to be on the interior. So make sure you have your 2 larger ones out to connect to the exterior pieces. So on the slip pocket piece, you're only going to find the center of the bottom because you do not want to snip into your finished edge of the slip pocket. And then you are going to center this nicely onto your exterior piece, matching up that bottom snip. Then clip them together to prepare for basting. So I went around and I just did a little bit of a snip around of my pocket piece because it was a little bit too large, so I just trimmed it out to the right size. All right, so now I've installed my magnetic snaps and my zipper pocket, and I've left the bottom of my zipper pocket open. And on the opposite side, I have my male snaps. I have them backed with Decovil Heavy and duct tape to give them a little extra stability. And now we're going to repeat what we did with the exterior, but with the lining piece, and in our clipped our pocket piece onto the lining piece that does not have the zipper pocket on it. Okay, so I'm going to find the center of this piece now by folding it in half, because I do want to divide my center slip pocket into two. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my ruler and match up those snips. And I'm just going to draw a line on the pocket as a guide. I have my center all wrong here on the bottom. It was not straight, so let's just fix that up. There we go. And I'm going to take my my invisible ink pen here, mark my center line, and then I'm going to baste around here, go up here, down again, and around. So when I get to the center line, I am going to go up 1/8 of an inch top stitch to the right of that line, get to the top, needle down, pivot. I'm going to hand crank for 2 stitches and come down the other side of that line with approximately 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then baste the rest of the pocket on. Okay, and while I'm here, just to save time, I'm going to go ahead and baste all of my exterior pieces at the same time. Okay, so we have all 3 of those panels done. Now what I'm going to do is I like to put a rivet right here in the middle just to give a little bit extra security for that pocket, because things will be coming in and out and I do not want that stitching to pop with use. We are also going to put in some decorative yet functional rivets here. So 2 inches in from the side, I'm going to make a mark about 1/4 inch down or so, or 1/8 of an inch down from my top stitching line. And what this is going to do is make it so these pockets do not sag on the front. So go ahead and install those on all 3 panels. Okay, so that is done on the lining. I backed it with a scrap piece of Decovil Heavy for extra stability. And on both my exterior pieces, I've done the same, and they are also backed with a piece of Decovil Heavy on the back. Okay, so now we're going to work on our gusset pieces. So you're going to take one of your gusset pieces, put it right sides together with your bottom piece, and clip it in place. And we're going to go across here with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and do the same thing with our lining piece. So now we want that seam. You can trim the seam a little bit if you want to. I'm just going to keep it full. You want to have that seam pressed down towards the bottom piece, and then we are going to top stitch that through the bottom to hold that seam in place. Just like so, and then you're going to do the exact same thing with the other side. Making sure that seam is pointing down towards the bottom piece again, and top stitch it into place. And you're going to rinse and repeat with the lining panels. Okay, so that is our 2 gusset pieces complete. Now what we want to do is find the centers of all 4 sides. So I'm going to match up my bottom seams here to find the centers of the bottom. Do a small snip, do the same on the other side. And we also want to do that with the short edges of the top of the gusset pieces. You will be doing the same with the exterior piece. Okay, so now we are going to attach this to our body pieces. So we're going to match up the center, put in a few clips to hold it in place, and match up the tops. Okay, and match up the other top side. Then we're going to evenly distribute the fabric in between our clips. Now when you get to the curvy part at the bottom here, if it looks like the gusset isn't going to fit, we are going to do some small snips right in here. And the reason we do this is because we're taking a straight piece and we are making it into a rounded piece. So these snips help distribute that fabric around the other side. This exact same process we will do again with the lining. It goes together exactly the same way for the one side. Okay, so I have brought my exterior and my lining pieces to the machine, and I'm going to go and stitch down the side with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So for the first side of the lining and the first side of the exterior piece, you will do them exactly the same way. Okay, so now I have already clipped the other side of my um, exterior pieces to the exterior gusset on the opposite side. Now the lining is done a little different on the second side. We want to leave about a 10-inch gap open at the bottom of the second side of the lining, and we are going to use that hole for turning. So go ahead and sew that with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. But when you come to the beginning of that opening, we're going to backstitch, jump over the opening, put needle down at the start or at the end of that gap, backstitch, and continue around. Okay, so that's lining complete, and then we're going to do the other side of the exterior. This is just done the exact same as we did the first side of the exterior pieces. No gap to be left in the bottom of this one. And that completes the exterior. Okay, so now to put it all together, what we want to do is take the lining piece right side out with the hole in the bottom. I like to put my interior zipper pocket at the back of the bag, so make sure you put it in place properly for your preference. I'm going to slip the lining in so the exterior of the bag and the lining of the bag are right sides together. We are going to match up the center marks, all 4 center marks that we made. And we want to make sure that we match up the lining seams and the exterior seams together. I am just nesting my seams. If you are on a domestic machine, I would open up your seams just to make it a little less bulky there. Okay, and then once you have the centers and the seams all matched up, then you're going to go ahead in between those already clipped places and evenly distribute the fabric and clip them together all the way around the bag. Okay, now I am going to take this to my cylinder arm. It's my 4th time using it. I'm so excited to be able to use this machine. And I am going to stitch those together with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now that red light you may see there, this cylinder arm actually comes with a laser where I could put my seam allowance as a guide. It's really cool. This is just me adjusting the seam allowance. You twist the light to get it to where you want it to go. Okay, and then once that's done, you want to make sure that everything was caught on the lining side and the exterior side, and it was. So now what we're going to do is reach in through that opening of the lining, and we are going to turn our bag through the opening in the bottom of the lining. If I were to do this again, I would have left that opening just a little bit bigger. I didn't leave it quite big enough, so it was a little bit of struggle to get through. That was my fault. I should have left about a 10-inch opening. I think I only left about a 7-inch opening, but I did eventually get her done. So then reach in through the bottom and just push out all your seams so everything is nice and crisp. Double checking for any kind of holes in case something slipped out of place while you were stitching and that you may want to go back in and fix. I was good. And then once it all looks good, stuff the lining into the bag and start pressing out that top seam of which we just sewn, making the lining and the exterior nice and flat against each other and securing them with clips, getting ready to top stitch. Okay, so I have all that going, and now we are going to go ahead and top stitch this with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Take it nice and slow because you want this curve to be really perfect. Now these seams, where the seams meet, it is really thick, so you may need a hump jumper. I do not need it with my machine, but I think if I were to be doing this on my Juki 2010Q, I probably would have needed to use my hump jumper to get over this. Okay, so that is all done and she looks fabulous. So now what we have left to do is to close up the bottom of the bag. So you're going to pull out your interior zipper pocket lining that we have left a hole in, and you are going to pull the lining up and through that opening in the zipper pocket. And then you're going to clip the opening in the bottom of the lining, and then we are going to close up that seam. Okay, and then you're going to stuff the lining back into the bag, and then match up that folded edge of our zipper pocket, clip it together, and then top stitch it shut. Making sure your raw edges are all folded under. Stuff your pocket back in, straighten it all out, and admire your work. Now we just have to put on the handles. Now this is really unique. I really like this. So I've done one side here. I'll show you how I did that with this side. So you're going to take your strap and you're going to put it in through the strap connector like so. Then you're going to take your circle ring, you're going to place it in like this, and then feed the strap up underneath like this. And that circle ring is going to hold it in place. It is not going to slip through there. So now you just need to rivet or sew your strap in place here. Like I have done here, I just riveted mine. But you could definitely take that to the machine, and look, now we are done.
All right, that's it. That's all, folks. We have finished it. What did you think of that? Not a bad sew at all, and it's super duper cute. Anyways, if you like this this video, please give me a like. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye.